even back then. I might have been a little difficult, but I would say that's even a little snug for describing me back then.
I would like to at least attempt to put this to rest. 1997 Survivor Series, the most famous wrestling match, one of the most in history. It was the departure of Bret Hart. You talked about this a little bit on Confidential, a WWE show, and wrestling fans across this country have put it to me to put it to you and ask, what happened on that night in Montreal? How much did you know about Vince McMahon's plan?
I knew everything. I knew everything. I was told by Vince that this is what they had planned, and I was told not to say anything. You know, it was his decision not to say anything, and even after the fact, to deny it. So that's what I did. Years later, they came down to do the show and the Confidential show, and I mentioned to the girl, I said, you know, a lot has changed for me in the last several months at the time that they did the interview. And I said, you know, I don't do an interview anywhere without being asked about what happened in Montreal. I said, I can't, you know, I need to tell the truth. And this girl hadn't been with the company that long. So she said, well, okay, I don't know what the situation is. So I made a call to Vince to try to tell him that I was going to, wanted to tell the truth. Couldn't get a hold of him, so I said, well, I'm going to tell the truth, and you guys can choose to play it or not. And I said on the show that I knew, and I did. And there's, that's it. I knew that it was going to happen.
Let me ask you this. The person that you are now, and the way your values have changed, and the way your life has changed, if you were presented with that same scenario, exactly, Bret Hart in Montreal, great champion, and Vince wanting to change things underneath his nose, would you have gone along with it?
You know, I don't know. But, what I think about is this. I would probably still have done it. Very simple. And people say, oh, the Bible says this, and that is you submit to authority. Your authority above you. That is your boss. You do your job if he asks you to do it. And that's what I did then. My boss asked me to do a job, and I went out there and did it. It's unfortunate that I don't know if you know the Teflon Don.
Of course.
And Sammy the Bull Gravano. The Don always made the rules, but it was Sammy Gravano who had to go out and pull the trigger. And I was the guy that had to go out and pull the trigger. And I'm not proud of it, but at the same time, I don't let it define my career. And I don't think anybody does. It was one incident in my career of over 18 years, and it happened. But there's still one guy, the same guy, that had 100% control over that to make that outcome different, and he chose not to, and that's Bret Hart. He simply could have done what all of us are supposed to do, and that's do what our boss tells us to do.
When you look back at your career, because I've heard this from guys who wrestled with you, that you weren't the best over the course of your career of doing what the boss was telling you to do when it meant humbling yourself in the ring.
I was not.
You were not the best.
Was not the best?
Yeah.
No, that's not true. I fought him tooth and nail on everything, but ultimately I always said, if you tell me you want it done, I'll do it.
But you would rather have turned in the title than lose it in the ring, right?
No, that's one of those things that you've never heard Vince McMahon say that.
Nope.
You'll hear the guys. Again, like I know you're referring to Bret saying, well, Shawn didn't want to do this. The only person that has ever said that is Bret Hart. You get Vince McMahon on here and you say, did you ever tell Shawn to do a job for Bret Hart? He asked, do I want to work with him? And I said, no. I said, the guy has not been supportive of me since I've been champion.
Shawn Michaels, I got to ask you about a guy who has supported you, Triple H. We'll do that next on OTR. You get your surprises in this business. An amazing show with Shawn Michaels. You were part of a group called The Click, right? You guys still all friends? Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Triple H?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, obviously we're not all in the same company or anything anymore, but no, we still talk. Obviously, I mean, I see Hunter every Monday, talk with him a little bit. Kevin and I talk. I don't get to talk to Scott as much. But yeah, we all keep in touch.
Is it hard to have really good friends? Not people that you hang out with and have a drink with, but really close friends in a world that sometimes you got to climb over or you've got to move in spite of somebody. I got to imagine wrestling's really tough like that.
I've always heard it is. And when you do establish those friendships and you stick together, you get branded with a name, and then you all of a sudden get called out to be this huge influencer or whatever in wrestling. I mean, it's a very, again, it's a very amusing line of work when you think about it. We were all friends that just hung out, drove up and down the road together, used to talk about wrestling ideas, and then we'd come and tell Vince what we talked about in the car, and boy, before you knew it, we were the most powerful group in wrestling.
You were all about wrestling, right? Like, at one point, wrestling was defined you. You were a wrestler. That's what you did 24 hours a day.
That's it, yes.
You know, you look at a guy like Triple H, who you're close with and have been close with over the years. He is living it right now because he's involved in so many aspects of him. What advice would you give to Triple H?
You know, it's hard for me to give any advice. I did the same thing. All I ever say is, you know, when you do get married and you have a family, put your focus on that. I mean, that's all I can really say. And you know, I really try to keep from.
Of course, if he gets married, he's still going to be in wrestling, right?
Yes, yeah. And again, I mean, I can't. You know, it's hard for me to offer advice into a situation I haven't been in. So, again, as I said, I try to keep from sitting there. You know, it used to drive me crazy when the old timers used to
give you advice.
Not give me advice, but you know, every time you know, is this blue? And then you get this, you know, 2.5 hour dissertation about how the color blue came about, and I just want to know, is it blue?
What's the most events that you wrestled in a year?
289.
Would you do that now? Because you have a young child and you say your values have changed.
No, I wouldn't do 89.
So you could never have if you would have been Shawn Michaels 20 years ago, the way you are right now, or 15 years ago, say, you would never have made it to the top, right? Because you would never have committed yourself 100% to this thing called wrestling.
Well, you know, I don't know. I guess it would be, you know, I was pretty darn selfish 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Now, had I had the same, you know, had the same woman come into my life and the same child come into my life, you know, I probably would have been able to think past myself, but I wasn't, you know, I didn't have the ability to do that. And, you know, again, to me, you know, it's Jesus Christ that did it. And again, you know, Rebecca and my son played a huge role in that.
On that note, we go to break. We're here with Shawn Michaels, this very revealing and very surprising show. Let us know your thoughts on everything that takes place regarding our show. This is for you. Hey, Shawn, next to Foley, no one has ever sacrificed his body for his craft quite like you. And it's pretty hard to debate that. You have poured it all into that. And you got a lot of people who agree with that. We'll talk more in a moment. We're wrapping it up with Shawn Michaels, not the interview that I think anyone in Canada thought that we would be getting. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for pouring your heart out.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
Let me say that you've been involved in how many WrestleManias? Because we're looking ahead to WrestleMania 19.
Started at 4. Or 5.
Right, and you've had many great matches. The Hour with Brett, is that number one?
That, if it's not number 1, it's 1.5 for sure, yeah.
I just can't help but think of you and Brett and think that you guys missed out on something unbelievably special.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I mean, I think we capitalized on, you know, I don't know if it gets much better than the Hour, but no, I loved wrestling him. I really did. I could, you know, you could go out there and have a wrestling match with him. It was a sheer joy to be.
You used to watch him backstage and say, that guy is unbelievable, didn't you?
I used to say that I think he's, yeah, I mean, I would like to get out there with him. And heck, he used to come back and say, you know, I see you being the guys, eventually somebody that's going to take my place.
I feel a reunion show happening right here on Off the Record. It's the feel-good story of all time.
I mean, I would do it, but until brother gets forgiveness in his heart, there's
Hold on, so you're saying you'd come on the show with Brett?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the challenge for Brett right now. Let's see if he'll do that.
Hey,
Let me throw out some names.
I'll sit there and say, Brett, forgive me, and let's move on. You know, I mean,
I'm wearing a helmet for that one.
And you know what? For what it's worth, unforgiveness doesn't make me suffer. It only makes him. He doesn't, he still looks angry, and that isn't healthy.
Let me throw out some names at you. Give me a 1 or 2
Sure.
line answer. Ric Flair.
He greatest. Woo! Oh, yeah, I think I'm his biggest fan.
You wrestled him for 5 minutes in '92.
Yeah,
that was it. Would you want to wrestle him again?
Yeah, I would. I would have loved to have, when both of us were at our prime, which obviously couldn't happen. But yeah, no, I would. And he and I talk about it all the time. I'd love to get in the ring.
Marty Jannetty.
My buddy, miss him. We've been playing phone tag for several months, just trying to get in touch with him, see how he's doing.
Vader.
Leon, a big cuddly bear. He's actually a pretty nifty guy.
Sid Vicious.
Sid, I had good matches with Sid. Everybody found Sid difficult, but he and I worked well together, I thought.
Well, you know what? Last name, Kurt Hennig.
Kurt, I was just at his wake. Tragedy, a gifted guy, so much fun, but a huge loss to.
Shawn, thanks. I got to cut you off, but thanks so much for doing